Now, this is more than disgraceful, if you ask me. This is downright perverse. The Home Office has dismissed the systemic rape of working-class girls by grooming gangs as a grievance narrative in a report. Rape, systematic, the industrial-scale abuse of vulnerable children swept aside as if the real problem is people being angry about it, right? As if you don't have a right to be. For years, thousands of girls were sacrificed at the altar of diversity, abused, ignored, abandoned, all because officials, those with a duty of care, were more terrified of being labelled racist than they were about the safeguarding of children. Predators saw these girls as disposable, as white trash, as far worse than I can possibly say on Ofcom regulated television. And the authorities looked the other way. And now, instead of reckoning that this shameful legacy is something we ought to just condemn, we get this instead. A report smearing anyone who dares to speak out as an extremist. I assume that makes me one. This isn't just tone deaf, it's absolutely bloody grotesque. I apologise if anyone is offended by the use of the B word. It's an insult to survivors, it's an insult to injustice, and it's an insult to the very idea of decency. You know, while victims in this country, we have many on this channel, rebuild their lives, shattered lives, the most awful trauma that you can possibly imagine. Officials are busy trying to control the narrative, even to this day, branding legitimate outrage, your legitimate outrage, as dangerous. This is the same cowardice and moral confusion that actually allowed these atrocities to happen in the first place. The British public has every right to be furious. It wasn't a mistake, it was a national scandal, a betrayal of the highest order of the most vulnerable. And now we're being told that expressing that anger about this abuse, that's the real problem here. No, the problem isn't the British public. The problem is the ideology of multiculturalism and the fear of offence that's turned basic truths into unspeakable heresies. We're talking about gladiators tonight. Well, we're going back to the days of the Romans. We're speaking about all of these things you can and cannot say. This isn't about a failure of policy. It's a failure of morality. And the public, rightly, won't stand for it. I find it absolutely disgusting that an official arm of the state can actually have a report like this published within it, and good for GB News and Stephen Edgington, actually, for publishing that on GB News' website. The government say now that they've, of course, looked into this and vice versa and all the rest of it. But is it not a sign of a Home Office that still just doesn't get it, that's still not on our side?
Well, it's the same elephant in the room, isn't it? Which is, we have a problem with men of Muslim faith, because that's what they are. It's not about the colour of their skin, it's about their faith and how they treat women and how they view women. And Maggie Oliver, who exposed all of this, along with the Times journalist, tells me that in this country, as we sit here, these grooming gangs are at work on our young, white, vulnerable girls in every town and city, and we need to be outraged and we need to expose them. But the problem is, I think our Home Office, along with every other institution, is captured by this multiculturalism, and they use the word Islamophobia to shut us down. And now they're using the threat of non-crime hate crimes to shut us down.
Yeah.
Links back beautifully.
Yeah, it does actually. That's a very good point, Renee.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Our two stories intersect here, because if you have a regime that stifles speech, so you're not allowed to call out legitimate criticisms about a religion, not about race, about a religion, which is a choice, in that instance, people are too scared to call out these sorts of crimes. It's a really good point.
I mean, Susie, do you welcome, then, the election of someone like Kemi Badenoch as leader of the Conservative Party, because she's actually said on the BBC, much to their horror, that not all cultures are equally valid, and this was a cultural problem, was it not?
I mean, I think the report that you've just spoken of, or, what's come out there, is completely appalling. and wrong. We're talking about, I mean, I've actually worked with victims, seriously, of like child abuse with children, you know, and, you know, tried actually to get people convicted and whatnot. And so there is also a big issue here of rape in this country and conviction rates being appallingly low. And just to say, the Labour Party actually have, or the Labour government have committed to like, I think it's like 80 new rape courts, etc. So actually, I think this issue, we are going to deal with it. But there is, don't worry, I can hear we know there's a different issue here. And I agree, you know, there's a different issue here. But I think what I would say on it is, I suppose what I'd say is I agree with you. There's an issue here that does need to be tackled, and it is, you know, in some ways, I don't know, I feel like it goes back 15 years. You know, it's been a long...
Me, folks, that's it. It's the end of the...
No, but I mean, I'm not agreeing that. I think that... I mean, the thing that... Look, let's just say, Kemi Badenoch, and I think, look, you want healthy democracy, and you know, this is one of the great things about this country. You know, we're not China, you know, and what I do like about... You know, what I like about Kemi Badenoch is she's happy, you know, she knows what she believes, and she's going to say it, and I think that is important.
Is she right on
and you want to have iron sharpening iron. Tell me what the statement was again.
The statement was that not all cultures are equally valid. Is she right to point that out, that we have a problem with certain cultures?
I mean, I don't...
Suella Braverman said that.
I mean, I don't know whether it's about certain cultures, but I think, look, there were big issues here, and what did happen, you know, with the grooming gangs...
What is happening?
And what is happening, you know... Look, let's be honest. I mean, like, the police resources need to be going towards that rather than knocking on people's doors because they've written a certain tweet.
I do find it faintly comical that people on the left just can't provide a straight answer to that question, that not all cultures are equal. It's the most common sense, obvious thing of all time. Of course they're not equal.
Yeah, I think multiculturalism has failed in this country, and it's failed in specific pockets of the country, because there are some places where multiculturalism sort of works, actually, where, you know, there's parts of London where we can see that. But on the whole, where there is a single dominant culture that takes over a traditional British culture, there is a massive failure to integrate. There's a massive failure to assimilate. And what we get is groups like these grooming gangs forming who are unaccounted for. And we saw how the police have policed the things like the riots, where they let the community leaders lead rather than the police enforcing the law.
And the word community is used deliberately to make it all sound lovely and soft.
You're absolutely right. And what that's allowed is that, again, the police will step on the door and they go, right, we think there's something going on here. They'll be called racist, and then they're afraid to report it. Yeah. So we've got a real issue from top to bottom in the Home Office, which is now being infiltrated by wokies everywhere, and in the police service.
Yeah, Susie, Yol has written in, and Yol is a member of GB News. Thank you, Yol. He says, I beg your pardon, just wait till Labour's definition of Islamophobia is announced. Is that going to mean that someone like Kemi Badenoch, someone like Suella Braverman, cannot say what they've said?
No, I don't think so. Look, I think it's really important. You've got to have a debate about this. I'm not like disagreeing with lots of things you guys are saying. You've got to have a good debate about it. And look, ultimately, what happened in Rotherham? I mean, look, it disgusts us all. You know, it disgusts. And I hear what you're saying, that we've got it going on now. And I'm like, maybe we need to have a task force for it. Is there a task force for it? I don't know. I'm not an expert in this area. You've got to have something that deals with it. But what I'm saying is, look, having worked firsthand with kids that have gone through this, it is devastating, it is appalling. Like, for me, I felt my own anger and frustration that we couldn't get people convicted on it.
I'll tell you what, make Maggie Oliver, put her in charge. She's a hero in my eyes, an absolute hero.
And she should be ahead of the task force
yes,
if we have one. And if there are these gangs grooming girls as we speak, they need to be outed now, whatever their culture.
Yeah.
My friends, if you're still watching, thank you very much. And I've got a request for you. Thanks to viewers like you, Recent UK, we're on a roll. We're standing up to the woke brigade and championing British pride, especially for the next generation. We're one of the only voices out there that are actually targeting young Brits, seeking to wake them up from this lefty fog and reminding them of what it means to be British. And here's the deal. I want us to go further than that. I want to see Reasoned take on the mainstream left-wing media, a dominant culture here in Britain. We're aiming to expand with more presenters, with hard-hitting documentaries, with live events, with crash courses, the lot. But for that, we need you. We're picking one day to fundraise for this next level project, and that's where you at home come in. we're asking if you'd sign up to share our fundraiser link with your friends and networks on the big day itself. It's a small ask with the potential for a massive impact. Plus, the top fundraisers, you'll bag yourself exclusive goodies and a chance to meet some very special guests, VIPs. More importantly, you'll be standing with us, rallying young Brits to the values that make this country great, as much as the left try and destroy it. So if you're in, click the Google form in the description below, drop in your details, and I'll be in touch. Cheers very much. Let's make it happen together.